Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson. I'll be your host for this one. As per usual, now I can start saying again because I've actually been back for a consistent amount of time. Josh and Scott obviously still here. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
Very well, and yes, this is the Belgian Football Podcast. We are back. Hope you've all had a brilliant week.
Yeah. Also, I want to thank Gent for being consistently inconsistent, referring to our podcast episode of last week, where it wasn't only referring to them, but they were still in mind. I'm not sure if we actually spoke it out loud and it's not about the club, Gent, but some of the players at least were involved, and they showed it well enough again. And now, so last week they already celebrated, but now they're officially also the 125 years old. Nice celebration as well, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't think of better ways to celebrate than the way that they did. Let's get quickly before we go into the league action. We'll quickly run through the cup results as well for people that missed that, which at least again did have something to celebrate in the cup. Standard beat Beveren 2-1. Beveren were leading for quite a long time in that one, but yeah, Standard nicked it late on. Charleroi beat Liège 1-0. Dender against Olympic Charleroi. What a game. Battle of the losers. It was Dender that came out on top, but they went the distance. This one finished 4-2 to Dender. They get their first win of the season, but not in the league yet. Anderlecht beat Ninove 2-0. Mechelen beat Liège in a hotly contested derby. That one finished 2-1. Genk beat Molenbeek 3-0. Anderlecht beat the Onion Boys Interact Aalst 6-1. La Louvière beat Heist 2-1 away from home. Union beat Tubize 3-0. Zotterwagen beat Belgica Blitzen 4-1. This is really testing me now. Antwerp beat Leuven 3-1. Ghent beat Patro 5-0. Bit of a statement win from Ghent there, but we'll get into them in a little bit. St. Jude their three, they beat Nokken 1-0. Beerschot were the only side from the lower divisions that actually won. They beat Westerlo 3-2. Westerlo are not having a good time of it at the moment. They are consistently inconsistent or consistently bad at the moment. Cercle Bruges beat Kortrijk 1-0 and Leuven beat Serang 3-1. That was obviously Felice Mazu's first game in charge, so he gets a win in the cup. We'll get to how he got on in the league in a little bit. Back to the league on the Friday night, we kicked off with the Walloon derby, Standard Liège against Sporting Charleroi. This one finished 3-1 to Standard Liège. Will was on comms for this one, and he described it as Standard's best performance of the season, in his opinion. Zotterwagen, they lost 4-1 to Union Saint-Gilloise. There was a little bit of controversy about the first goal that probably shouldn't have counted. But when the game finishes 4-1, it feels a little bit hard to kind of talk about these things. Club beat Dender 2-1. That means Dender have gone 13 games without a win. I haven't yet seen if this is the longest winless streak, but it must be there, or must be pretty close. And if you're worse than that, I mean, I don't know. We always talk about kind of Derby in England and kind of talk to us the worst team, but I'm not sure where Dender are on that. But if they're not there, they must be getting close. And I don't know where they're going to get that win from. Anderlecht beat Mechelen in the Hazy derby. That one finished 3-1 to Anderlecht. Westerlo lost 1-0 to Genk. This is why I said Westerlo consistently being a little bit poor, because they were one of the only sides that haven't scored against Genk. The run is over. The goals conceded run has gone, which is a shame, I guess. Leuven scored. They scored 4. What was going on? The Mazu effect. They beat Ghent 4-0. We got to talk a little bit about some of the controversy at the end of that game. Well, it's not really controversial. It was the right decision was made, but the protagonist in that will definitely need a little bit of a chat about. St. Truiden, they beat Antwerp 1-0. We are going to talk about Antwerp because we just simply can't ignore them. Antwerp went down to 10 men in that, but they had some chances. St. Truiden probably would have liked to have killed that game off a lot earlier than they did. Raal against Cercle Bruges was just bizarre. This one finished 2-1 to Raal. We will talk about Cercle Bruges a little bit as well, but looked like Cercle had snatched a point right at the end, only to literally go down the other end and concede instantly, with Raal barely having any chances at all. Cercle had so many, but in the end, it was Raal who came out on top. Let's start in Antwerp. I presumed that Steph Wills would have been sacked by the time we sat down to record. Paul Gaysons has come out and been like, we're not going to make any emotional decisions, I think he said. He wants to speak to kind of the manager, the players, see why the players aren't performing for the manager, see where the trust has gone or something like that. Just some sort of bizarre nonsense where it's clear that, in my mind at least, I just don't think they've got anyone in mind lined up. Because obviously the man they wanted all summer isn't coming, like Rick DeMille, unless he gets sacked. Maybe they're hoping Charleroi will sack him. I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen within the next couple of days. I think Bayat has well and truly tied his colours to the mast with Rick DeMille, and he's going to ride him out for as long as possible. But yeah, they've been poor. Like, let's face the facts, they've been poor. But I think the conversation we should probably have is, who do you think the fault actually lies with? Does it lie with Wills? Does it lie with Overmars? Does it lie with the players? Because if you think about, since they've won the league, they've just sold their best players every season. Like, their best young players have kind of gone, other really good players have gone, and they've not really replaced them with like for like quality at all, to be honest. Like, the players that have come in haven't done anything to improve the side, really. Nozawa had a good game, to be fair to him, in goal. I think he was pretty decent. It's clearly not his fault why things are going wrong. And I think the decision to switch from Thielen to Nozawa has been it's been fine. Like, I don't think there's been an issue with that, especially in this game. He made a couple of really good saves. He looked quite good at commanding his area. He looked quite good at kind of commanding the defence and stuff like that. Foulon getting sent off in this game did kind of kill them, so I do feel a little bit bad for Wills there. I also don't think they were terrible down to 10 men. I thought that when they initially went down to 10 men after the first half, they were pretty poor. But in the second half, they started to create a couple of chances. But I was kind of looking a bit at Vincent Janssen's numbers, and if you just see, I think you can see that they've lost their quality, but just the steady decline in his goals per season. So 21 in the first season, he's there, 17 in the second season. Last season, only 13 goals, still playing above 35 games a season, 4 goals in 14 games so far this season. I don't think he had a sniff, if I remember rightly, at the weekend. I can't remember him having any chances or anything in the game. I'd have to look it up just to see, but he scored 2 during the week against Erpen, but apart from that in the league, he hasn't scored since the 3rd of August. And there's no one else that really is going to score goals for that team at the moment. They just have not got goal scorers in there. They haven't got creative players. They haven't really got very many exciting players, to be honest. Like, Al Sahafi was a bizarre signing because we saw that he was only really effective on the counter-attack for Beerschot, and Antwerp aren't going to be playing on the counter-attack that often. They need the ball a little bit more. It potentially could work if you just lump it up to Janssen on the counter and he flicks it on or plays it around the corner. But we've spoken about this, all three of us, about how Janssen's been coming in deep. Is that Will's problem? Is that Janssen trying to get the ball? Like, who's the fault lie with there? So while I think Wills wasn't the right appointment, I also don't think Jonas de Rock should have been sacked, but that was just kind of my opinion from last year. I know you guys were kind of a similar one a little bit as well. I don't fully blame him for the situation that they're in, because I just don't think this squad it's not balanced and it's not good enough. It's not second bottom from the league, though, and that's the problem. And that's where I think he probably will bite the bullet for this situation. But I do have some sympathy for him in that sense. Names on a postcard for who they think is going to come in and kind of drastically turn things around, because financially, do they have, or are they willing to spend the money that might need to be spent on someone of the caliber to do it? Mark van Bommel's still available, and he's turned down a lot of options because he wants to stay with his son who's injured. It's not far across the border, is it? So that could be an interesting one. And we obviously know he has an affinity with the club, but whether they could afford him is another question entirely. And whether he'd want to come in and manage this team when his stock's been pretty high, I don't think so. Joris is shaking his head at me. So
why would he tarnish his
reputation,
good times, his memories and reputation in general? Yeah, but also inside the one club where he actually did well.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, Wills is what his record at the moment is: 2 league wins, 3 wins in total with the cup out of 14 games. It doesn't matter what situation you're in, that's just not going to cut it, unfortunately. So he will probably be gone by the time this podcast is out. If you listen to this at the end of the week, I think he probably will be gone.
We've seen this plenty of times, actually.
Exactly.
You'll be sacked by the time we finish this evening. We're back here.
This could have just saved everyone a little bit of oxygen. Could have saved me a little bit of oxygen there as well, and some words, just by just getting on with it. But equally, he doesn't want to get on with it for some reason. So yeah, it's bizarre. The fans aren't happy. The players don't look happy at all. They're not very entertaining or fun to watch at the moment, which is a shame, because over the course of this podcast, they have been a side that I've enjoyed watching. We went, like, having gone there when the times were good. It was really fun. The atmosphere was fantastic. Like, it's a great place to be. The city's really fun and vibrant as well. So, yeah. Ironically, while they're building a new stand, they're having a terrible season, isn't it? Like, why does this always seem to happen? You start investing in your stadium and you go and absolutely bottom out. But thankfully for them, and I think everyone else, Dender are going to finish bottom. So you don't have to worry about relegation. But I don't think a bottom 4 finish is what Antwerp were envisioning when they started the season. But yeah, interested to hear your guys' thoughts as well.
Yeah, well, that's 2 points from 24 now. Yeah, and as Ben was saying, penultimate in the standings, that's as low as it's going to get for them. You can't get that lower unless you're Dender, of course, and, we'll take them out of the equation just because you kind of have to. There's maybe more chance. The question, are Dender going to win a game? Actually, we were posing that kind of last week. I've got to say, I'm kind of amazed he's still there, actually, and that it's taken so long after another defeat. Coming into this game, Joris did say they really need a result this weekend, particularly after kind of Leuven leapfrogging them as well and kind of adding to the pressure there. It was kind of a must win, and the fact that they still haven't made a decision is just really, really odd to me. I would have brought the curtain down kind of straight away myself, just because for at least 3 weeks now, Steph Wills in his press conferences, I think, has he's gone already for me. I think he's avoiding direct questions around them not playing well, them not getting results, and kind of batting them away in an attempt to ignore it. So a smart manager, I think, deals with that by dealing with it head on and giving reasonably intelligent answers and not avoiding what everyone is well aware of. Because we all know the press are going to write about what's going on anyway. You don't reduce the noise by kind of trying to cut off the questions or pretending that, the free fall isn't actually happening. So you expect polite answers like, well, we just need to kind of keep working hard and stick together and try and find solutions. They're the smart answers and obvious answers to those questions, rather than the, we're not getting a bit of luck type responses that we've seen from a number of managers, or, we're just continuing to kind of do our thing. The worrying thing for me is Will's own body language and responses, I think, are really bad. Do you know what I mean? This is a guy who I think he's lost the dressing room, I think. But more worryingly, I think, and this is where Paul Gaysons and Mark Overmars and Sven Jack should have acted really quickly, I don't see any underlying data, guys, to tell me that there's any confidence that this is, just a bad quarter in the season, which teams can have. You need to have something concrete, particularly in your data, suggests, right, okay, there are positives that aren't translating into anything that might start to do that. There's another club we'll talk about in a wee while who have got the opposite problem. I think they're underachieving a little bit, but there is some underlying data in that club's case to suggest that potentially things could click and change at some point. I don't see that with Antwerp. And I don't see that in Will's behaviour either. And I just don't feel watching them that the players want to play for the guy. You know what I mean? I don't see it at all. So there's no chemistry there, I don't think, and no will. Whether that's no pun intended there, by the way. Whether that's a kind of chemistry thing, or he's just not good at motivating this group of players, or there's over familiarity, obviously, because he's been in the coaching staff for a long time at the club, but I just see nothing to suggest that they're about to kind of turn a corner at all. Paul Gaysons was trying to put a very positive spin on it all today, being actually honest in a way that Steph Wills wasn't, and saying, look, we are considering his position, we're talking to people, we're consulting, but we're not going to be rushed, we're going to take our time. You're thinking, right, well, we're over a quarter of the way into the season now, and you haven't won a domestic league game in over 2 months. I think, we're at a kind of an acute point where a decision needs made. And he's not coming out arguing, look, there's some data here that suggests we could turn a corner, we just want to give it a bit longer. There's nothing nothing to get a grasp of there that I can see at all. So I would have brought the guillotine down, I'm afraid, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, if I'm really honest. What about you, Joris?
I think he's lucky that feels that's with the format. I think they probably also bought for that because they have a really young squad. Ironically, of course, now one of the more experienced players they brought in, got that red card. You can, of course, also debate for whether that should have been, but okay, regardless of that, it was a silly challenge that he made there. That's in Foulon, of course. That and that's so there's indeed just a little to no chance they will go down in 2 weeks time. The next 2 weeks they of course face La Louvière and who are doing well, of course, but I mean, you still would. I think everyone still feels like that's a winnable game, even though they're very tough to beat, as many sides already have seen by now. But and then I guess very important games, which on the other hand is also maybe a good moment to make a switch. But okay, since the pressure is, despite the position they're in, is not really on them yet. I guess that might be something that keeps him in place. Yes is of course also a bit more and more a target for the fans themselves as well, of course. But yeah, he's not the most popular man either. He brought them the successes, but he's also bringing them the current situation in a way. I think everyone kind of knew this was to some extent going to happen. That they would fall so deep is maybe something else. And on Overmars, difficult to judge again. Like a lot of young players brought in, so maybe, like he said, in a few years' time we will speak differently. But so far, everything seems to be very raw, and there's no big signings there. The goalkeeper indeed looked good this weekend, of course, but yeah, he's of course also replacing the man who's now behind the in the stick between the sticks at Manchester United. So that's no easy replacement. Anyway, he might do as well as he can, but it's not likely that he will be immediately following in his footsteps. So yeah. I guess it's a bit of a surprise that he's still in position, in place. Very un-Belgian competition as well. I do think, to be honest, as a general remark, I've touched on it here in this case already as well, but I do think this format does indeed keep managers at both ends of the table a bit longer in their seats. Okay, it does seem to be something that's just going to happen at some point. And yeah, okay, I guess I can get that if they indeed have like some people that are unavailable at the moment on their shortlist, for example, but that they might be able to they might also be in a difficult situation, or I mean, they're gathering funds or trying to convince or anything like that. In that sense, maybe, but apart from that, on sportive merits, it's a bit of a miracle that he's still there as of recording. The big disclaimer, as you both already mentioned in this discussion, very. The squad is really indeed not great, I have to admit as well. I don't see that much potential in it as then Overmars definitely doesn't. I mean, in a few years' time, he might be right. That's of course a thing with potential. But yeah, in the games at least, Wills isn't making them click and not making anyone stand out either, which a decent manager probably would be able to do. And yeah, there's a lack of leadership on the pitch as well. I agree that that's something Bill said himself, I think, as well. He's got a point there to a certain extent. Of course, since that lack of leadership is there, it would have been good to make clear instructions, make football easy for your players, and then make them work in a system. But it all is. It's not working out well. And yeah, I agree with Ben, specifically on yesterday's game against as of recording game against Intrade. They were, even with being down to 10 men, considering that factor at least, they were not playing that bad, but they just couldn't create. By the end of the game, in the end, there were a few chances, but it should have been over by them. And yeah, just terrible states, and I'm not sure if they will be able to climb up much in a classification for this season anyway, and that maybe they have to eye the cup if they want to reach some objectives for, or if as I expect they want to get European football next season, and I do think that's the only way they still have, even though the differences in the classification, in the ranking, are still quite small. So who knows? But the underlying factors is mainly indeed not speaking for them. It doesn't seem to be like a quick turnaround would be possible. Then again, we saw in the Eredivisie across the border that one manager changed at Heracles, the clear bottom of the table. They won they scored 4 in the cup against Karel Hoefkes, NAC Breda, and now have trashed Pek Zwolle with 8-2 and more than doubling their goals tally. Sorry, it's a bit of a sidestep, but only to mention that not everything can turn around, whether that's with a new manager or not. Even leave that in the middle. But even if they would not have made the change, maybe the results would have turned. But so that might be some hope for Wales and or Antwerp as a club. That's the question mark.
To be fair, though, that the team you mentioned, Heracles, do have one of the best strikers to ever play football in Giz Hornkamp. So that does make a difference. When I saw his, I still can't go over his name. It's such a funny name. And that result, to be fair, I had an eye on it, and it was it was 3-1 at half time, and I was like 8-2, or 4-1 at half time. It just doubled up.
The goals came pouring, yes.
Exactly. Maybe that's who they should go and get. I mean, I've said this before about over.
I believe he also played in sorry. I believe he also played in England or in Great Britain at some point in his career as well, which was even worse. And then you have to hear this kind of stupid jokes that we're making every single day.
Exactly. No, just quick on Overmars. I think I said it a couple of weeks ago. I feel like this point needs to be made, but his reputation was so high at Ajax, but it's Ajax in the Eredivisie at that time. If you just follow any Dutch football and you look at any player that's played in the Eredivisie, if you just look at the academy they've come through, it's 9 times out of 10 fucking Ajax. They all play for young Ajax. They just all come out of there and then go off to play for all these other clubs. It seems it's mad. So he's got that academy kind of producing players. And then Ajax can obviously sell for big money, bring in players, that sort of thing. Yes, he did a good job there. Comes into Antwerp when Paul Geesens is the checkbook's open, mate, let's go spend some money. And brings in all these players. They win the league. He's never done it without money. And now he's doing it without money. And from what we've seen so far, he's not very good without money. Because I'm just looking through these players that have come in, and it's Kiki Kiyate, I obviously loved him the other week, but this is a man that just got relegated from Liga, and there's a reason he was a free agent for as long as he was. Glenn Bilge came in from Sovetov. I haven't seen much of him, really. Thibaut Sommers we've spoken a lot about, so I'll leave that one. Nozawa, fair, he seems to be pretty decent. Hermans, again, Hermans and Foulon, they're kind of easy ones to pick up because you're picking up for that reason. Obviously, Hermans, it's a shame he's not played, but would he make much of a difference? Potentially with some creativity, set pieces, stuff like that. Hermans, I'm a big fan of Hermans, but if you're tying your hat on hoping that he comes back and turns things around, it's not the best kind of situation. A couple of these other guys, Al Sahafi we spoke, he had the best chance for them to get back into the game, did quite well, bullied someone off the ball, was through on goal, and just the finish was poor. Kokova made the save, but it was poor, really, really poor. DIY I haven't seen much of. Babadi haven't seen much of. Tusanimir, seen a bit of. Hurimbarev, seen a bit of. Do you know what I mean? They're not. There's no one there you're looking at that guy looks like there's something there. The main player we've seen kind of potential from in my opinion, again, I've probably mentioned it before, is Hamdawi, and he started Hamdawi at the weekend just to see if something would happen. Like, that kid's got something. Like, you can just see that when a kid has like technical ability and stuff, they just need to learn some other things. Is Will's the man to do that? But then we spoke about leadership as well, and that's something that the players have to do. Like, your Janssens have to do that. And to be fair, like, he leads in a certain way. Like, he drops deep to try and get on the ball. He's out and about. Dennis Pryor, like, come on, you've played Premier League football, you've played Serie A football. You don't look like a man that's ever played in those leagues, to me, at least, when I watch it. Like, you expect like a level of quality from a player coming in like that. It reminds me of it's topical because there was a piece about it the other day about when Edgar Davids went to Barnet, and you're like, Edgar Davids playing for Barnet in the National League. And I feel there's a bit of revisionist history because the article I was reading was saying that Edgar Davids looked like he was a better player than most of them there. He didn't look that good. Like, I'm not going to lie. This was like 40-year-old Edgar Davids that hadn't played football for a while, and he looked like 40-year-old Edgar Davids that hadn't played football for a while. So much so that he was player manager, and at one point he was playing two right wingers, and he was one of the right wingers, and they were just stood next to each other on the touchline. And as the fan, like, we were watching this game, like, this is Edgar Davids. You've played like international level football and you can't recognise that there's a right winger next to you and you're playing right wing. Like, come on, man. So it's like, where is I don't want to rag on Dennis Pryor, but like, he obviously came back from an injury, came on the pitch. I've not noticed him. It's like Dendoncker last year for Anderlecht. Like, didn't really notice him. You expect these players to come in and make a difference, and they haven't. And I think that's frustrating. But I do think Overmars deserves a fair amount of criticism, to be honest, because they knew the budget they had coming into this season, and other sporting directors can work within this budget. Like, there's other sporting directors in the league that we know can work within this budget and bring in players and scout players. And if you're either being too stubborn to look beyond your usual areas for players, or you're not listening to the data, like you talked about the data, and the data is clearly not showing signs of kind of positivity. But what data are they? What's the data on the players that they're looking at? Like, the places they've gone to buy players are like Liga and places like that. It's like, why aren't you looking in other leagues where players might want to come and improve themselves? Because you could probably afford some of those players that are at a higher potential than some of the players you're getting from other places. So, yeah, I think he deserves a fair amount of stick, and that's why I'm like, it's not just Wills. It's kind of like, Gersons is responsible, Overmars is responsible, Wills is still responsible, and then the players are responsible. Like, everyone's responsible. The only people that aren't are probably the fans that are funding the bloody new stand.
See when you think about Mark Van Bommel's side, which it's not fair to compare with, and that's not what I'm getting at here, but when you think about how they set out tactically in comparison to this side, that was a side that were really well equipped to dominate in Belgian football. That's the greatest compliment I think you can give Mark Van Bommel, because at times they weren't great to watch. Even in that championship winning season, they weren't the most entertaining side. You know what I mean? I think, most people would admit that. But what they did do was they absolutely bossed the midfield in games, and they squeezed games so much physically that they were able to steamroll a lot of games and get a huge number of points in games, get games over the line by, the sheer physicality, conquering games physically. Those margins matter in this league. And this side is nowhere near, nowhere been able to compete on those basic but really important levels that even sides down at the bottom have to be kind of competent at if they're going to compete as well. So there are some basics that aren't right. And there also comes a point, Ben was highlighting the Overmars. There's a lot of criticism there for him, which I completely agree with. That there's always a tipping point, isn't there, where, okay, sides are always going to sell their best players for profit. You expect that. You expect people to leave sooner than you would want as well. But you have to have plans in place for these things so that your side is still competitive in some level. And what's happened is they've been gutted so much for various reasons that they're no longer competitive. And the senior players in the squad, who could be described as the experienced heads, the winners in the squad, if you want, the Janssens, the Foulons, the Haremans, the people who've been about and seen a lot at this level, none of them are bringing anything. And I think Vincent Janssen just looks like a guy who's kind of, he's kind of bottomed out and just thought, well, fucking hell, look at the state of this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can do nothing for you. Do you know what I mean? It's like he's getting nothing. And at times he just looks frustrated, forlorn and unhappy, as you would in that environment, particularly when you've come or played in a side there that, were dominant for, what felt like such a long period. It was just one season, but the fall off has been extraordinary. And if the hope is in pivoting to developing youth longer term, which is the right strategy, we all know they're going to be waiting, 3 years, maybe 3 to 5 years before they truly start to see, some benefits. Some Overmar's point about in 2 years, maybe this side could be close title challengers again. Maybe, but you don't have that long, as a buy before you need to get some results. And at the moment, they're in a position where someone has to pay the price, and we know it's never going to be the sporting director, and it's certainly not going to be the owner. And unfortunately for poor Steph, then he's the only one who can carry the can, even though he's only partly to blame. I think Joris's point about sometimes a change just for the sake of it in this situation actually is enough. We've seen at Leuven, all right, it's early days, only 2 games under Felice, but what we're seeing is full throttle Mazu already, as Toby Leuven described him this week. He said he's come in, he's wiped the slate clean, he's said to everybody, this is a fresh start, and he's given them, he's told them, go out, attack, and have a go, essentially. Obviously something that isn't happening at Antwerp, and they're just not responding to him, and that in itself was reason enough. And I think Steph knows that, and he looks like a man who's just kind of like, shrugging his shoulders, waiting to be told that that's him being relieved of his duties, because very few managers fall on their own sword.
Yeah, and why would you? I guess you need the payout. But on Janssen as well, like this is like I probably need to do a deeper dive into this if I really want to kind of analyze it more. But he's had 32 shots this season, 2 goals, which you mentioned, an XG of 3.7, so they're not high quality shots. 16 of them are coming from outside the box, and that suggests to me they're not creating anything. Like, he's not in the box getting on the end of things. He had 31 shots outside the box last season in the entire season, so he's almost there without his outside. And they're like, what was it, 61 shots inside the box. So it's like, even last season when he didn't score that many goals, they were at least creating stuff, and he was getting in the box because they had wingers that could like get it in and stuff like that, and it's just not happening. And you kind of introduced me to a nice segue onto Leuven, because what I really noticed about their victory over Ghent was just the confidence going forward that they had. And there was actually finally some belief that, like, we might actually score. And we did. We scored 4. There's some really nice goals as well. Like Ghent, as Joris said at the beginning, living up to the consistently inconsistent kind of mantra. Their last 4 games, a 4-1 defeat to Zulte Waregem, a 4-0 win over Standard Liège, a 5-0 win over Patchel Eisden, then a 4-0 defeat to Leuven. So what's that? 8 goals conceded and 10 goals scored in the space of 4 games. Like, that's just, it's mad. And I just don't know. Like Lecco, he can't be under pressure because, I mean, where are they in the table? They're 5th, but within touching distance of 3rd. So like, it's just bizarre, like what's going on there. But fair play to Leuven. Like, I think, that was just a breath of fresh air, I guess we could say. But I mean, it doesn't help for Ghent when, you bring on Max Dean at half time to try and give some impetus to the side and a little bit of bite, a little bit of niggle, a little bit of needle. You get a penalty in the 80-something plus minutes. You're like, at least we can kind of maybe turn things around, and not turn things around, but at least get a goal, bit of like kind of save face a little bit. Penalty gets saved by Toby Leuven. I then discovered when I was writing something about him for the Get Football thing, and I was trying to find like a picture for the article. The 3 pictures came up, and one of them was him missing a penalty in a playoff game. And I was like, okay. And it was in exactly the same, if I remember right, it was exactly the same side. So maybe Leuven had seen that. But I was like, why is he taking penalties? So he misses that. And then it can't be that long after. How many minutes was it after that he then went and got sent off? I feel like it was like they just went down the other end. I mean, it was 10 minutes, but it feels like it was pretty much straight afterwards. But goes down the other end. Matthew Mertens, who we spoke about last week, suffers a lot from injuries, has had his seasons curtailed plenty of times. He's through, about to play it wide, plays it wide, and Dean just sighs him down, like foot to the back of the kind of calf muscle, maybe just a little bit of that. He then gets obviously red carded because it's a terrible tackle, and then acts as if it's like the most outrageous decision that's ever been given. Of course, Bigger Versata has to get involved. Like, if anyone's going to get involved, Bigger Versata's the man to get involved. And I get it. Like, if I was a teammate of someone like Mertens, who I've seen struggle with injuries for that long, and then I see some moron just take him out for you're losing 4-0. This is it's the most pointless tackle I've ever seen. There were defenders back. It was horrendous. It was a stupid tackle. Definitely red card. Other players are going to react. He says something, and we don't know what he said, but we can imagine it's probably not worth repeating on a podcast. Dean then does like this. Is I was saying to you guys before. He reminds me of so many kids I knew at school and have played football against, who are just like, meet me outside. We're going to have a fight. And he's saying it to Verstappen. He's saying it to someone else. I think it's Van der Heyden comes over and is like, mate, just get off the pitch, you're an idiot. Sam Wise is also like, just get off the pitch, you're an idiot. As he's going off the pitch, he's telling all the Leuven like staff and stuff like, come on then, let's go outside and have a fight. It just get decked. Like, don't be an idiot, mate. Like, you're not that hard. And it's now he might miss 6 games. And I think that's like, you've just been out injured for a long time. You technically are a good signing for Ghent in a kind of few seasons where they've not had many good signings. You've been a kind of bright spark. Like, what are you doing, mate? Like, what are you like? I saw a couple of Ghent fans in kind of like on forums and stuff like that, just being like, someone needs to get an arm around him and sort this out, because we can't afford to have this happen to us when we need someone that's going to score goals and kind of create stuff. And he is that sort of player that can do that. Like, he's definitely talented. We enjoyed what we saw of him last year, but yeah, Scott, you were mentioning before we came on air that he does have a little bit of a reputation for this, and there was hope that maybe moving over to Belgium, new surroundings and stuff, that would kind of be taken out of him. But this is just moronic, isn't it? Like, 4-0 down, yes, you miss a penalty, it's frustrating. People miss penalties all the time, but then to go and do what you did, just so stupid. And I think we all probably agree that Ghent really shouldn't appeal this, because they should have no grounds to appeal this. It's just the punishment will be deserved.
Yeah, Max did have a bit of a reputation when he came over to Belgium for being a bit hot-headed as a youngster, and I think there was a feeling that, as Ben was saying, coming to Belgium, might dampen that down a little bit. Clearly, it's just a part of his game. We've seen little flashes of kind of raw petulance, I think. On a number of occasions. That this was a kind of full-on sort of red mist moment, really, where we saw all of the worst aspects, I think, probably of the darker side of Max Dean, that's for sure. Really bad tackle, justified red. The response after it just makes it all worse, kind of the whole thing. And I don't know, maybe stuff was said, during the course of the game, in the lead up to the incident as well, in an attempt to wind them up. You see these things happening. My money, we're wondering what Bigger Versata said. I'm just going to guess that he said something about Max Dean's mum. That's an obvious target. And usually in the top 2 or 3 if you're going to wind somebody up. He needs to learn from these things. He really should be better than that, I think. On Ghent more broadly, consistently inconsistent, as Joris was saying. Maybe we should call this week's episode Still Consistently Inconsistent, the sequel. You look at their last 4 games, that it's just Ghent in a nutshell, isn't it? They get hammered 4-1 by Zulte. That game could have been more than that. They then go and win 4-0 on their big birthday party night against Standard at home. They then hammer Patro in the cup, not necessarily that surprising, but then are on the receiving end of a battering from Leuven, which is arguably the worst result of the lot when you consider the form that they've been in and how few goals that they've been scoring as well. It's really, really odd that, a side can swing about like that, particularly when you look at some of their data, because in terms of the chances that they create and their outputs, the sorts of outputs that lead to you getting points in games, I think they're up there in the top sort of three. They're actually really very good. So it must be hugely frustrating for Lecco to see these kind of wildly, these wild fluctuations. And I think he's tempering what he says about that a little bit. People are trying to get an answer out of him as to what's this about, Ivan? And sometimes he's quite hard on the players to try and get a response, and at other times he just kind of shrugs his shoulders. So I think he's treading a fine line, because I think he himself is not sure. I don't think he even understands it. It's just really, really odd. You never know what you're going to get from them. That's also an argument probably for getting a season ticket as well, because, at home, for the most part, they're reasonably good to watch and tend to get results, tend to win. But away from home, it's like they're one of these sides who just can't perform away from home for the most part as well. So they don't travel well. So there's just some really weird things kind of going on there, I think. And maybe Max Dean's behaviour is indicative of a frustration in that squad, possibly. I don't think, as much as he has great potential, I don't think a temperament like that is good in a squad that is fluctuating so much in form. You need a bit of stability, I think, and he just undermines all of that.
Yeah, my proposal was to name this episode in a more seasonal theme, Halloween horror tackle for Max Dean. But we can see, of course. But yeah, definitely not a good. You guys said everything, I guess, but just very, very terrible. Yes, he's my player of the week. I'll have it out, but not for the right reasons. He's my player of the week. But just that must be one of the more ridiculous dim performances I've seen in a long while. Missing that penalty. Okay, fair enough. Already maybe a bit weirdly want to take the penalty, but on the other hand, game is lost anyway. If you miss it, it's not so terrible, and you can get some confidence if you score. Yeah, unfortunately, backfires. Then he gets a big chance that he puts over the bar. Not that much later. That's already tougher. And I mean, yes, he's the person that finds that's the toughest of all and the most frustrating of all. So, well, what do you do with that frustration? Well, you guys talked about this at length now. So, yeah, that tackle and potentially, okay, we have to see if everything will be confirmed and so on. But they're requesting 6 days, of which 4 effectively of suspension for him, which, to be fair, is seems like a fair punishment even for this kind of tackle, because it's also one of the worst tackles. And I'll also quickly throw in my second player of the week in the same genre, but in Challenger Pro League. Different, similarly in the sense of it's for the bad reasons, very much similar to what actually happened, but yeah, a bit more unlucky. Petro Predicici from Lierse, who at first opened the score in a very cool game to see, like it's 4-4, but opened the score for the 1-0, scored the 1-0 with a nice header for Lierse. To then, well, like the scoreline suggests, Lommel scored 4. Half of them, unfortunately, were own goals of Predicici. Both times he couldn't really do much about it. I've seen the goals, but yeah, just a bit. He was just on the bad side of fortune in this case. But ultimately, they rescued a point in stoppage time. So I guess the squad won't be too angry about it. They got a decent result since they're struggling anyway to get the wins, actually, to make that small segue already. But to circle back to Ghent, though, my personal hope is that worry is that they play at home against my favorite side next week, and the way the results have been going, that doesn't necessarily bode well for them. But we'll see. They They actually have the second best attack in the league, though. So to come back to Scott's second most goal scored in the league, to come back to Scott's stats on that, they actually are in the top 3 there, and they're close to it still. They were before the game started, or the game match day started, and are still very close to the top 3. But unfortunately, they're also right second to bottom, I guess, or equal second to bottom in goals conceded as well. So it's clear to see where frustration can come from as well, actually, from anyone around that club and on the pitch as well. But just a quick throwing in 2 players of the week from my side already.
Joris, in true BFP form, Joris gives us 3 or 4 players of the week, which I think quite right too. Almost a 5-a-side team of the week. My player of the week, actually, and this is where I can't be accused of any bias because he did something brilliant against a side I've got a massive soft spot for, as everybody knows. I've gone for Anderlecht's young left winger, Nielsen Angulo, principally because the goal he scored against Mechelen this weekend was a goal for the ages, which you should never really score because it was so poorly defended. But the desire to pull that off and just complete the move, just brilliant. I've seen it about 30 times, honestly, from various angles, and it despite the bad defending, it just looks great. The idea is good. Try it again 100 times and you wouldn't pull it off. It just great. And it was one of those ones where the stadium just erupted because they kind of couldn't believe that he'd actually pulled it off, because it's not something that happens very often. So for that goal alone, it's Nielsen Angulo for me this week. But that aside, he actually had a really good game. He got an assist as well. 5 chances he created. One of them was obviously for another one of the goals. 4 shots. Offensively had a really strong game and kind of looked up for it. Good performance this week, but that will almost certainly be on my goal of the season contenders act. It was just beautiful football, really. You want to be entertained, and I was. It was a get up out of your seat moment. It's just a shame it was against a side that I've got a massive soft spot for. But anyway, credit where it's due. Magnificent stuff.
I have to admit, so Angulo was also indeed on my shortlist for this week, but I had a feeling that Scott would go for this one, and I mean in the whole game I understand it. On the goal, I don't really get why Scott is so raving about it. To be honest, that's how it's a good goal, of course, but not that special, and I can't see through the terrible defending there, unfortunately, as well. But okay, I'll have let everyone can have their own opinion on that, of course. But I personally don't feel it as much as Scott is.
No, I guess I'm just going to be neutral and not say anything. I'm going to talk about Angulo, though. I feel like he's had a great season so far. He's going to go to the World Cup. Unless he gets injured, that he should be certainty on the plane. They like him in the Ecuador side. I can't see him being in the Pro League next season based on performances so far this season. Links with La Liga already. Goes to the World Cup. He could probably do something special in a game or two, and that's all you really need to do, depending on who they draw in the group stages and stuff like that. So, yeah, him and Big Kev leading the way for Ecuador could be quite exciting times.
One of the things that also shows for the Antwerp fans, to coming back to that as well. Yeah, nobody would have thought that last season about Angulo as well. So the players might develop easily, and they might bring the side the world of good as well, and then make a massive difference as well. Although that might also reflect a bit on how the side is doing in general, even though the results are lately at least not that bad. Level of place, maybe something else, but okay, maybe let's not go into that discussion too much. But just shows you we and I include myself definitely in that. Should maybe be sometimes more patient with players as well.
True, yeah, and kind of on the back of, but coming back to what Overmars said about they'd be competing for the title with that young team in a couple of years. Like, if you need them all then to come together at the same time and step out at the same time, because Angulo's stepping out now, but not everyone else is stepping out, and then Angulo will be gone, and then it's kind of like what Scott was saying, is it like, where's your replacement for these players? Like, it's just I think Overmars, it's very wishful thinking, and a bit too of an Ajax mindset, in my opinion, where like you'd get those enough talent together at that time, and you can probably deal with it. I don't think you could do that at Antwerp, to be fair. But yeah, I wouldn't have seen Angelo as one that I'd be saying, yeah, he's definitely going to go, and might have a really good World Cup. And Pedicici's like own goal thing, it just reminded me of one of my favourite moments ever, just because he was a player I just thought should never have been playing at the level that he was playing at. John Walters scoring 2 own goals and then missing a penalty against Chelsea in 2013. That was like one of my peak footballing moments. So I just wanted to drop that one in there. Another reference, we talk about Max Dean getting pissed off about missing the penalty, missing that big chance to get himself sent off. Make it 4-0 down, it doesn't matter. But it was very much, it just reminded me of there's a game in the NBA where a player scored 70 points and his team lost, but they still had this like team photo with him holding a little banner that said he scored 70 points. And I was like, but you lost the game. It's a pointless point. Like, doesn't really think. I feel like Dean, if he'd scored, he'd have celebrated. And it's like, but you're 4-0 down. It just doesn't matter.
Just a small thing, of course, in NBA, it's still in basketball, it's still a bit different, of course. Like, you won't tell it makes. But I
don't like that player. This guy's my like John Walters of the NBA. So like, I just don't like him. So I didn't like it. And now his team's crap again. So I'm very, very happy about it. And people who follow the NBA will probably know exactly who I'm talking about. But yeah, they had a run in with the team that I support where they beat them when they were injured and they were gloating in their faces. And then they never won a title and they got thrown to pieces and we won a title. So anyway, let's talk about Rafiki Said because he's my player of the week. It's about time we had a Comoros winger doing bits again in the Pro League. Selemani, you are missed, but you've been replaced because we got Rafiki Said, so it's fine. There's just something about like a flair winger that I love, and he's a flair winger. He just loves tricks and skills, loves to try and beat a man, doesn't always come off. But I was just watching him in this game, like he got the assist, he got the goal, obviously that's great. But a player that just picks up the ball and you're like, oh, he's going to do something entertaining with the football, and I just miss it so much. Like we just don't seem to have that many players wanting to do that anymore. And yes, I sound like a moaning person. I'm not going to start saying football was so much better in the 2000s and talk about that Barclays men and all that weird stuff that people talk about, but that we have lost a lot of kind of inefficient wingers, sadly, because they just have no end product most of the time. But this was kind of, it wasn't on the level of like a Musa Gineppo in terms of like tricks and skills and stuff like that. But it was like that sort of player that like, just things were happening when he got on the ball and it made me excited, especially when they have a bead on the other wing who's doing the same things. They've got these two wingers that like want to beat their man, but can beat their man. And their first thought is like, I'm going to try and beat the man rather than like, I'm going to pass backwards or I'm going to pass sideways. It's like, no, I'm going to take this man out of the equation. And you know, set pieces are coming back into vogue and long throw-ins are coming back into vogue. And maybe like beating a man will come back into vogue. And people are like, actually, a player that beats a man and takes them out of the game is really valuable if you can then add in an end product. So Rafiki Said, yeah, complete the most dribbles, was just a joy to watch. I will say that I've been slightly biased and I've been wanting him to be good because I want another Comoros winger that's good in this league. So I've been kind of like, you're good. And he is. I think he's pretty good. He's pretty fun to watch. And I kind of agreed with Will. I thought this was one of their best performances of the weekend, of the kind of season, especially under everyone. It's definitely been their best performance. Said was really good. The rest of the team played pretty decently. Thomas Henry got his goal. And yeah, I just feel like with Said and Abid, they're a team that you can enjoy watching because they have got that talent out wide. And yeah, fair play to him. He's the first player of the week from me and hopefully not the last one. I don't think it will be. I'm sure I can shoehorn him into a couple more and maybe I'll just slip him into Joris's list every now and then and see if he notices. But that's my player of the week. And that's the Pro League wrapped up. Let's go into the Challenger Pro League. A team that I wanted to lose did lose. So I'm quite excited to talk about this. And Scott, over to you to give us a rundown of all the kind of stuff that's been happening. Obviously, only one team is left in the cup, unfortunately, which is a little bit of a shame. But it means everyone can now focus on trying to win games if you're Charleroi and trying to get promoted if you're Beveren and Kortrijk.
Might that one team that's still in the cup be the team that you wanted to lose?
They can stay in the cup. They can stay in the cup. That's fine. They just can't come back to the Pro League for at least a season.
And you see, we're totally especially our host is totally unbiased against all sides.
Just don't like John Walters and Beerschot getting promoted. Just this season. They can come next year, that's fine, but you need a cooling off period if you're that bad.
So Matchday 12 in the Challenger Pro League. What happened? Well, Lierse and Lommel, as we touched upon earlier, played at a thriller, a 4-4 thriller that saw a hat-trick of sorts. Not the sort you normally pay to see. Yeah, 4 each, thrilling game at a fixture we were at a few years ago. We went. It wasn't as dramatic in the night we were there. The weather was, mind you. Do you remember that, guys? Do you remember that spectacular thunderstorm? Anyway, that's another story. Go and listen to that episode in the back catalogue. It's called the Road Trip, I think. Lokeren and Frank Moran drew 2 each. Young Ghent beat Eupen 2-1. Olympic Charleroi drew 1 each with RFC Liège. Will Olympic Charleroi ever win a domestic league game? The quest goes on. Beveren are still masters of the universe, still top of the table. They beat Jonas de Rock's club next, 2-1. Molenbeek and Jong Genk was 1 apiece. Beerschot lost 2-1 to Kortrijk, who are still reasonably hot on Beveren's tail in second. And Patrized and Anderlecht Futures finished 0-0. So in terms of the bigger picture, not that much has changed, guys. Olympic Charleroi are still bottom, still struggling appallingly, and Beveren are still cruising, really.
Olympic Charleroi climbing up a little bit, almost catching Club Next. That might not matter in the end as well. That could also be fun by the end of the season, I guess. But let's, off the pitch, I guess. But let's see. They seem to be improving a little bit, I guess. They're at the bottom. Okay. Very slowly, but I think it's now 2 weeks in a row. They almost got that first win, and they're in a fight. They seem to have arrived maybe a little bit in the Challenger Pro League. Whether it will be enough by the end of the season, still very doubtful. But the differences are smaller there still than in the Jupiler Pro League. So that's definitely something that would speak in their favor if they ever get that first win, of course. Club Next, like I said, also only 1 point ahead of them and also still winless. So that's. Yeah, and you can also ask that question there, but it might have less ramifications because of the format. And on the top, of course, Bever really cruising. That's already 10 points clear now from a non-promotion spot, straight promotion spot. Which is interesting and good. Of course, with the game more still than both Kortrijk and Beerschot. Still at least 7 virtual points ahead, so that's 2-3 games. They're really going to get over the line soon already, and that's ridiculous to say after 12 games. Luck. So if RFC Liège is clawing back to Beerschot now a bit as well on their tails. So the league is still very interesting, to be honest, at both tails. Also, it still feels a little bit big. There's also a lot of sides that are already not playing for much, but nonetheless, interesting to follow at both ends on the table. And curious to see how it will develop further. And you already know my favorite player of the week from this league, man of the week, maybe favorite is maybe the wrong word here, but the man of the week in this league. One last shout to Perdicisi, but I hope it goes a bit better next time, at least at one end of the pitch.
Maybe we should have an award, the Perdicisi Award of the Week, for just like man of the week who just does something utterly ridiculous that we just want to put on there. So I'm going to add that section in, and we can all throw names into the hat for that every single week, because that just seems like a bit of fun.
I vote Max Dean every week already.
It could be. I mean, even when he's not playing, he might still have a chance of getting in it. Just a couple of things for me. Like Olympic Charleroi, obviously, they scored 2 against Ender, which is half of the amount of goals they've scored this season in 11 games in the league. You mentioned about nothing to play for, but it's funny, isn't it? Because I don't think it's going to happen. But if Frank Moran went on a mad run, they're only 9 points off the playoffs, but they are 14th. So it's kind of like, it is tight, like you said, but they probably are one of the sides you're just like, you're going to lump them into that middle bit eventually, and they're not going to have much to play for. I was having a look because obviously I think if I've got this right, it's so confusing. The only way Club Next could go down is if another academy team is ready to replace them. So I thought I'd go have a little look at the first amateur and see, is there anyone there? And if I've got the right league and table, Charleroi B team is 6th at the moment. And I was like, if you're Bayat, do you just suddenly start pumping a couple of players into that team?
I have to burst the bubble there because it's even more convoluted if someone from the Flemish side of football this applies for Jong Gent and Club Brugge, and so Club Next, and for Anderlecht who are subscribed in the Walloon version, Charleroi could potentially be replacing Anderlecht, but not Club Brugge. That needs to be a Flemish one. Yeah, so they really secured themselves, even if it's not 100%. But
unless
yes,
Cercle Bruges B team down in 17th. If you go on a crazy run, you could be that team. Who'd have thought? Club Next replaced by Cercle Bruges B team. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that is not going to happen this season, and I can't wait for the ensuing legal battle that will happen if Selang, Frank Brun, or Liège get relegated as a result of that rule. It's just so complicated. But as you always said, it's a fun league. It's a great league. It is probably a little bit too big. I prefer it slightly bigger like this than it was when it was just like 9 or 10 teams. I think that was a little bit ridiculous. At least we see a couple of different names and different faces. Maybe just get rid of all the academy teams and then it'll be big enough and it'll be the right size. Who knows? But that's just my opinion. Anyway, that probably does it for this week. I feel like I've nattered on a fair amount, more than usual, so apologies for that. Guys, anything else to add before we wrap this one up?
A few random facts. One, I have to rectify myself already. Horenkamp hasn't played in the UK. I guess it was more like wishful thinking or like thinking a lot ahead, like if he would make a career, that would become funnier than it already is, because it already made headlines in the UK. That I'm sure of, like when he first came to prominence. And the fact that, you touched on it. We touched on it. I think already having a clean sheet for finally in the league for the first time in 22 games. But also another fact for this season is O, who has scored 6 times across all competitions so far, which is, I mean, maybe not as much as I at least would have hoped for, but at least a decent amount still for beginning of November. But they've all come away from home so far. So he has yet to score a home goal. So that's random small fact to add there as well, for sure. And of course, we didn't talk much about Club Brugge as well, of course, but that's 6 wins out of 6. So they're on a good roll in results, even though the performances actually have not been that convincing, but they're just about doing what they need to do currently, much like Union for most part as well.
And before I go this week, I will just add best of luck to the Belgian sides in Europe this week, because I think we're going to need a bit of luck.
Yes, yeah, I think we are. There's some tough games. Union are up against Atletico Madrid. A real test for who bet. I mean, I say I haven't done that well in the Champions League. They're on the same amount of points as Union, but it's away from home in Madrid. Like, that is a tough place to go. But I hope for all the fans travelling over there, I hope you enjoy it, because that is a fantastic stadium to go to. It's going to be a fantastic atmosphere. And who knows, maybe you can steal something there. Club Bruges, they are hosting Barcelona. I mean, Barcelona, that is those sort of teams, if you're playing them in Champions League, that's just what Champions League football's all about, isn't it? Like, as a kid, watching your team face Barcelona, like, I've never, ever experienced that. And I don't think I'm ever going to experience that for the rest of my life, to be honest, to see Reading play Barcelona. But who knows? Maybe I'll get lucky. But that, big game. That's, again, another one that's going to be pretty tough. But again, never know at home.
I already hear some Antwerp fans saying, like, last time they went to, they have a little bit. They need to have a little light as well. So, like, Club Brugge better get a good result there. And same goes, I guess I'll fill it in as well then now, of course, for Genk against Braga, away to Braga. That's also a tough fixture, even though Genk actually are somehow also getting some points, at least domestically now, but the level of play is not there yet, so I'm not sure if it will be enough against the Braga side, who are also a bit shaky still, but are a good side for sure. So definitely a real Iberian island Belgian clash here, and I fear we know what the most likely result of all three of those games is, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, Braga lost their first game in 7 matches against Porto, so I mean, it should have easily won that clearly away from home. I mean, they've won a couple in Europa League as well. Beat Celtic, obviously. Scott would have seen that.
Hey, Genk are beaten in 6 now.
It's true, and they beat a Scottish side, so it's a battle of the Scottish conquerors. Yeah, but it's not the best team in Scotland. Clearly, they're not beating them because they've got a bit of the Union luck rubbing off on them with their kind of links to them. Anyway, that pretty much does it for this week's episode. As per usual, if you haven't yet, please do leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. It really does help us know if this is worth all the time and effort we put into it. I mean, even if you don't leave a review, we're still going to do it. So, but it does really, it does help. Thanks to everyone who has donated to us at Buy Me a Coffee. Again, that really does help with the running costs of the podcast. If you haven't yet and you'd like to, the link will be in the show notes as well. Substack link in the show notes as well, as per usual. Again, I don't know what you're doing if you haven't signed up to that yet, because you should have done already. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.